DW Africa Link.
Millions of lives are at risk as UN aid agencies struggle with funding cuts, leaving the world's most vulnerable populations at risk. UN aid agencies are being forced to scale back life-saving support, cutting food aid, healthcare, education, and protection services for millions of refugees and displaced people. As African countries are being hit especially hard, hope is growing for refugees in Ghana. So, what really is the situation in Ghana, and how optimistic should refugees be about their future? That's what's coming up. I am Eddy Micah Jr, and you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
The funding crisis is global, but its impact is deeply personal. Without urgent action, the most vulnerable will pay the highest price. But even as international aid shrinks, local solutions are proven vital to survival and long-term resilience. Ghana is home to refugees from over 40 countries and is taking a unique approach that will provide an alternative livelihood source for its tens of thousands of refugees. It is called the Ghana Refugee Agribusiness and Sustainability Program, which aims to help over 20,000 refugees become self-reliant, turning crisis into opportunity. Let's get more from Tetteh Padi, the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board, and our correspondent in Accra, Ghana, Adwoa Domena. Welcome, both of you, to the Africa Link podcast. So, Mr. Tetteh, how bad has the US aid cut affected refugees in Ghana? What's the situation on the ground?
Well, it has affected us quite badly. We don't have huge numbers. We have up to about 30,000. But the effect on us is such that we're having to cut back on some of the services that are being provided. UNHCR itself, which is our main partner, is cutting back on staffing. And so, I mean, it goes to show that we are losing technical assistance as well as funding for the activities. And so, we are taking quite a hit for it.
What are the things you used to do that is not happening now due to the aid cuts?
It has affected our supplementary feeding program for very vulnerable refugees. It has also affected people who require assistance beyond the levels that our national health insurance scheme provides. And then people who also are in tertiary education who have grants. All these are categories, very important activities in the lives of refugees that have been affected negatively.
Right. So when you say affected and that the aid cut is impacting all of these groups of people, what exactly do we mean? How much longer can your board go without US aid coming through?
So what we're doing now is that we are looking, or we're focusing on raising funds from the private sector. The point we make to the private sector is that it is in all of our assist refugees, and not doing so makes them resort to negative coping mechanisms. And so it is important that all of us assist. And thankfully, the private sector is listening and is understanding our message. So we are able to provide some level of assistance from sources other than the usual humanitarian donations from the West.
Right. But I still really want to understand now, before these plan Bs and these extra donations from private sector come through, how much further can you go dealing with refugees with what you already have in the bank from the aid?
So it's important that I highlight that prior to the most recent cuts, the funding had been dwindling. And so we had already started looking at our other options. So for instance, for some years now, we've been implementing skills training, livelihood assistance to refugees to make them more self-reliant. And so, by and large, a significant number of refugees have been on their own in terms of providing their basic needs. Now, it is only the Burkinabe refugees who started coming in, and with them, we realized from our survey that most of them, close to 50% of them, are farmers and have good farming skills, and opted to farm if we assisted them. And so we are embarking on this program that we call the Ghana Refugee Agribusiness Sustainability Program, which aims at harnessing the skills of refugees and employing them in the area of agriculture. So as much as we've been hit, to go back directly to your question, as much as we've been hit, we have been planning for this because we saw it coming.
Okay, which I would say is a very smart move from your outfit. I have to be honest, I was surprised that some little research that I did suggests that Ghana apparently has refugees from more than 30 different countries. What's the look like?
Right. So your research is correct to a large extent, because actually it's more than 30. It's up close to 40, about 40 countries who have refugees here. Most of them are from the sub-region, West Africa. Many of them are from beyond West Africa. We have people from the Central African Republic, from Cameroon, from Chad, from Sudan. But we also have refugees from as far off as Afghanistan, Pakistan, Uzbekistan. We have refugees from Sri Lanka. So it's a very wide range of refugees that we have in this country. So even though we don't have hundreds of thousands like some other countries, we actually have refugees from a lot of countries, and that influences the planning that we do for refugees, because you need to take into account the variations, the differences, and then make sure that every group of refugees is well catered for.
Right. And what are some of the main reasons driving refugees to Ghana?
So the main reasons driving refugees to Ghana, for the largest group of refugees we have, that's the Burkinabes, it is the insurgency attacks that is taking place in their country. So it's generalized violence that is driving this. And indeed, with refugees from afar as well, the countries that I mentioned, you can straight away recognize the fact that these are countries with general problems. But we also have refugees who seek asylum due to persecution based on their race, their religion, their nationality, membership of a particular social grouping, or for political reasons. So these are the reasons for which people seek asylum.
There's so many questions I want to ask, but I feel like if I keep digging in, I'm going to digress from the solutions that are happening on the ground, because I find it fascinating, to be honest, that Ghana is dealing with the refugees from more than 40 different countries, as you say. But let's pause that a bit here, Mr. Padi. I'm going to go to our correspondent, Adwoa Domena, who is standing by. Adwoa, I'm sure you've also been educated a bit, and probably maybe not as surprised as I am, because you've been digging into this matter for a while. But we're talking about this in the first place because of World Refugee Day, right? And I'm assuming that Ghana is planning something for the day. That's World Refugee Day, for those listening, just to be clear, is 20th June every year is World Refugee Day. So Adwoa, what's the plan that Ghana has?
Eddy, thank you for having me. It's interesting that you asked this question, because usually, for the past 8 years that I've been a journalist in Ghana, usually you find that the Ministry of the Interior would have some activities lined up, for which perhaps they even invite the media for coverage, to some of this forum or fora that they organize, usually with the refugees present, with all their development partners present, and people who technically support refugees, like how Mr. Padi has already enumerated. But this year, the day is yet to be exhausted, but this year we've not seen anything of such. And maybe Mr. Padi would educate us whether or not there's going to be a special activity. But this all goes to confirm the impact of what the funding gap is having, particularly on Ghana and some other countries. About 3 days ago, the UNHCR completed its staffing adjustment, and we are being told that at least 3,500 permanent staff positions are being discontinued across the world, and hundreds of temporary staff positions have also been completely terminated. Some offices have been downsized worldwide as well, and Ghana is no exception. Again, the UNHCR is anticipating that this year is going to end with a funding at roughly the same level as it had decades ago, which paints a picture of the intensity of how it is struggling worldwide. But I'll just say that in the case of Ghana, and I'm glad that Mr. Tetteh Padi has listed some solutions already on how Ghana is hoping to deal with this situation. In the case of Ghana, I'll just say that usually people deal with problems in a different way. So yes, the problem exists, but it doesn't mean that they should throw their hands in the air or throw in the towel and say that we can't do anything for you. Right. In fact, the UN Refugee Agency states that, yes, we admit we are struggling, we admit we are facing challenges, but what we cannot do is to give up on refugees. And I think that's what Ghana is doing, trying to look for solutions and find a way to still make their refugees feel at home. I have spoken to some refugees in the midst of all of this uncertainty, and what they say is that they are not sure about what the future holds for them. In fact, some of them say that usually they look forward to some of these activities that is organized every year, so that at least you find people from the donor agencies coming with support, with grant, coming to talk to them and all of that. This year, they are not sure if that is going to happen. In terms of education, in terms of health, there are some who have also expressed uncertainty about even accessing certain funds that were available. They are afraid that the little funds that is available may be given to the vulnerable groups in the volunteer camps. But even that, Mr. Padi is telling us that there's a program for the vulnerable which is being suspended. So it really is a murky situation. Right. But I'm glad with how Ghana is approaching the whole situation and trying to put this under control.
As Adwoa was saying, Mr. Padi, World Refugee Day, refugees are expecting something, some sort of event to mark the day. They are not seeing anything. Adwoa, our correspondent, is alluding to that fact. What's going on? Is it because there's no cash?
To some extent, yes, but it is not accurate that there's nothing happening. In our refugee camps and settlements, we have activities going on. So the refugees themselves are marking the day with games, with symposia and so on. But it is the main event in Accra, the main event which we usually organize, which we usually rotate to areas where refugees are hosted. And sometimes we do that in Accra. It is that main event which we are not having this year. And so, yes, Adwoa is right. And it's partly because we do not have that much funding. She indicated the effect of the cuts on UNHCR itself and how they're losing so many staff. And Ghana is one of the countries that has been significantly affected by this. So what we're doing is that we're doing media engagements, such as this one. We're speaking to the media to sensitize people about the current situation refugees find themselves in, and also basically highlighting the resilience of refugees and host communities, particularly who host refugees. Because in Ghana, we've always encouraged refugees to live in host communities because we know that it helps with livelihood. Refugees who live outside of refugee camps and settlements are able to engage in economic activity, which helps with their upkeep and dignity. Okay. So we will continue to do the sensitization as best as we can under the circumstances.
Right. So we know that in Uganda, the World Food Program is rationing food for refugees due to the funding cuts we've been talking about. Yeah. Is that the situation in Ghana somehow? Are you rationing?
So what is happening is that in places like Uganda, who have millions of refugees, the effect is a lot more significant. That negative effect is a lot more significant.
Right.
So the positives for us is that our numbers are not that big. So even though the general quantum of assistance going to refugees is decreasing, for us, because we have our small numbers and because it's also only the emergency situation we have with the Burkinabes, it's only Burkinabes who are being provided with direct assistance. And thankfully, the World Food Program is still able to do that. I'm not too sure how long they will continue to do that for, but for now, the Burkinabes who are in that need of direct assistance are being given that assistance. But it's the same group of people that we are starting with the agribusiness program.
Right.
And so hopefully by the time the WFP is unable to continue, the refugees themselves will be able to stand on their feet.
Right. I mean, what you say is absolutely right. I mean, Uganda has millions of refugees. Uganda is actually also home to one of the largest refugee camps in the world. Comparing Ghana to Uganda in this case, miles apart. Ghana hosts refugees, about 30,000? Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes.
Right. So, it could have been worst case for Ghana as well. But now is your chance, Mr. Padi, to really dig a bit more into this program that you talked about, Ghana Refugee Agribusiness Sustainability Program. What exactly is it, and how will it close the gaps that are being felt now regarding the U.S. fund aid that is not coming through anymore?
Right. So the expectation or the plan is that it will, to a very large extent, fill that gap that is being created. And so this is a program that seeks to tap into the skills that refugees come from. A lot of people think refugees are only helpless people who come with arms open and ready to receive assistance. But from our experience, a lot of refugees come with skills, with qualifications that we can use to build our own or contribute to building our own society. So the grasp seeks to make use of the skills, the farming skills of the Burkinabes and other refugees. It is a large-scale agricultural production plan that actually feeds into our government's Feed Ghana program. So for that reason, we are talking to the ministries of agriculture and the ministry responsible for agribusiness to also support, while we obtain support also from the private sector, because given that we don't have the traditional funding sources, we are looking at the private sector now, and thankfully they are responding positively. And what we intend to do is to scale this up to other areas, and hopefully it will actually serve as an example to other countries as well.
Okay. Adwoa, let me come to you. How optimistic are the refugees that you've spoken to that even though they are currently facing challenges, that this Plan B, agricultural sustainability program, is actually going to work out for them?
Well, Eddy, so the profile of the refugees I spoke to is even encouraging even to me, because the one I spoke to is currently having her master's in public health. There's another person who is currently into IT learning, trying his best to carve a career for himself in the IT field. They have expressed hope that, especially some of them have families here. They have family in the refugee camps as well. And so they are hoping that for families who are not able to support themselves, this program will come in handy for them. But they are particularly focused on asking more international bodies to come to their aid, at least from my interactions with them. They do not necessarily see the immediacy of the solution. Because if you say you're training people in farming, how long are they going to be trained for? What is the duration of the crop production? And when are we expecting the yields to be ready? So it looks more like a long-term solution to them. But in the short term, what they are hoping for is that the immediate things that help them access education, access health, access feeding will not be compromised because of what is happening. So they are appealing to other international donor agencies, maybe people who are not funded by the US, to look their way as well. But they are hoping that things do not get as bad, just as Tetteh Padi has said.
Right. So, Mr. Padi, I don't know what your response is to that. Of course, the plan B is looking ahead, finding something more sustainable so that even without much international support or US aid, that you're able to still manage things properly. But in the meantime, people want something to be done now. How are you sort of balancing that act?
Yeah, so what we're doing is engaging the private sector. Where we've had a few organizations come up to support. And directly, particularly in terms of in areas of education, tertiary education, and so on. But let me quickly mention that access to basic education and to secondary level education is free, just as it is for Ghanaians. In the same vein, access to health is available. We register all refugees on the National Health Insurance Scheme. So those areas are covered in that sense. But it's at the tertiary level that refugees mainly rely on scholarships. Mind you, we also arrange and advocate for universities and other tertiary institutions to charge local level fees for refugees rather than the foreigners fee. So these are some of the things we're doing to help the situation. But directly, we are approaching other sources of funding, scholarships that can fill in that gap for us. Mind you, even before this, there were significant number of refugees who qualified for tertiary education who did not have access to scholarships. So it is not new. That doesn't make the situation any better. But it's something that we've been working on consistently, getting more partners come on board to support refugee tertiary education. And just to add that there's a lot of solidarity already with refugees, and that is because of how we have included host communities in the development projects that take place, or in the development of refugee settlements and refugee camps, just as Adwoa mentioned.
Okay, well, that is good to know. Tetteh Padi, the Executive Secretary of the Ghana Refugee Board, thank you very much for your time. Also, DW Correspondent in Accra, Ghana, Adwoa Domena. Many thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, a bit of optimism for the future seems to be in order. However, refugees are still feeling the impact of the aid cuts right now. Let's listen to some of them in Ghana.
The cuts actually affect everyone, including refugees, which is actually the most vulnerable among all. Because when you move with nothing. So then you look out for the support that comes from outside. And hearing that support is being cut off or is even limited, it's like, it's something that you wonder if there's even hope about it, right? Like recently, refugees, like, there's no livelihood, right? Especially those in the camps. They don't have the opportunities that they used to have. Even if they have, it's limited to those that are most vulnerable. And then it's like you really don't have hope anymore.
In terms of aid cuts, US cutting of aids is affecting us. Coming for the assistance, we reduce the type of having food, shelter, and healthcare. Even though the most of all is education, for the people to be educated in order for them to fight for their safe. If all of those things cut, then it's not going to be easier and very harder for us to live as a refugee.
Those were the voices of refugees who now call Ghana home. Now, World Refugee Day, held every June 20th, honors the strength of refugees and calls for real action, not just words. This year's theme, Solidarity with Refugees, urges us to listen, protect, and support them with real solutions so they can rebuild and thrive. We'd like to hear from you on this, so please share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Your voice matters and can make a difference. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Don't forget to click follow and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Mugabe. And I am Eddy Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW, made for minds.